The grand ballroom of the Ashford Palace Hotel glittered beneath crystal chandeliers, worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. Hundreds of guests filled the room, dressed in designer suits and elegant gowns. Wealthy investors, politicians, celebrities, and members of high society had gathered to witness what newspapers were already calling the wedding of the year. At the center of it all stood Adrian Blackwood. Tall, handsome, and impossibly wealthy, Adrian was the heir to the Blackwood Group, a business empire that stretched across continents. Every magazine in the country had featured his face at least once. Women admired him. Men envied him. Yet as he stood before the altar, his expression remained cold. There was no excitement in his eyes, no joy, no love. Across from him stood Sophia Hart. She looked breathtaking in a gown of ivory silk adorned with delicate lace. Her dark hair cascaded over her shoulders in soft waves, and her calm green eyes reflected the golden glow of the chandeliers. To the guests, she appeared to be the luckiest woman in the world. None of them knew the truth. The officiant smiled warmly. Today we celebrate the union of two remarkable people. His voice faded into the background as Adrian stared at Sophia. He knew he should feel something, anything, but his heart remained trapped in the past. Trapped with Elena, the woman he had loved for years. The woman who had left him without explanation 3 years ago. The woman he had never forgotten. When his grandfather had arranged this marriage for business reasons, Adrian had agreed only because it would secure a major merger and satisfy his family's expectations. Love had never been part of the agreement. As the ceremony continued, Sophia noticed the distant look in his eyes. She had seen it before. Every time he looked at her, every time they met during the months of engagement. She knew exactly what it meant. The officiant eventually reached the vows. "Mr. Blackwood, do you wish to say a few words before exchanging rings?" The room grew silent. Guests smiled expectantly. Adrian looked at Sophia. Then, to everyone's surprise, he spoke quietly. "You deserve honesty." The audience exchanged confused glances. Sophia simply watched him. Adrian took a breath. "My heart already belongs to someone else." The words echoed through the ballroom. For a moment, absolute silence consumed the room. A champagne glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered against the marble floor. Several guests gasped. Others stared in disbelief. A few reporters immediately reached for their phones. The bridegroom had just confessed that he loved another woman in the middle of his wedding ceremony. The officiant froze. No one knew what to say. Everyone turned toward Sophia. They expected tears, shock, humiliation, perhaps even a dramatic exit. Instead, Sophia smiled. Not a forced smile, not a broken smile, a calm smile, the kind that made people wonder what she was thinking. She looked directly into Adrian's eyes. Then she spoke. "That's perfectly fine." The guests looked even more confused. Adrian frowned. He had prepared himself for anger, for accusations, for heartbreak. He had not prepared for this. Sophia tilted her head slightly. "Just make sure you pay your debts." A strange silence followed. Adrian blinked. "What?" Her smile remained unchanged. "You'll understand one day." The words unsettled him far more than tears would have. For the first time that day, he felt uneasy. But before he could ask further questions, Sophia extended her hand. "Shall we continue?" The officiant looked between them nervously. Are you certain?" Sophia nodded. "Absolutely." Minutes later, they exchanged rings. The ceremony continued, yet an invisible tension lingered in the air. No one could forget what had happened, especially Adrian, because Sophia's response made no sense. What debts? What was she talking about? And why did she seem completely unhurt? The reception lasted well into the evening. Music filled the ballroom. Guests danced and celebrated. But rumors spread faster than the champagne. Every conversation eventually returned to the same question. Why had the bride stayed? Several women approached Sophia throughout the night. They offered sympathy, advice, even warnings. Sophia accepted every comment with graceful politeness. She never explained herself. Across the room, Adrian watched her. The more he observed her, the more confused he became. She wasn't pretending. She genuinely seemed calm. almost as though she had expected his confession, as though it had changed nothing. Eventually, Adrian found himself standing beside her near one of the balconies. The city lights sparkled beyond the glass. "You embarrassed yourself today," Sophia said softly. Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Me? Yes. I told the truth. You chose the worst possible moment." He couldn't argue with that. Sophia took a sip of champagne. "Still, honesty is usually better than lies." Adrian studied her face. "Why aren't you angry?" She looked at him. Her eyes revealed nothing. "Because I didn't marry you for love." The answer surprised him. "Then why did you marry me?" A small smile touched her lips. "For the same reason you married me." "Business?" Something like that. Before he could ask another question, she walked away, leaving him even more unsettled. Late that night, after the celebration ended, the newlyweds arrived at Blackwood Manor. The estate stretched across acres of land and resembled a royal palace more than a home. Sophia stepped inside. Marble floors reflected the glow of antique chandeliers. Paintings worth millions lined the walls. Everything radiated wealth. Yet Sophia felt nothing, because she had not come here for luxury. She had come for answers. As servants carried luggage upstairs, Adrian loosened his tie. "You can have the East Wing." Sophia looked at him. "The East Wing? I assume we're not sharing a room." A hint of amusement appeared in her eyes. "You assume correctly." Adrian nodded. "Good. At least they agreed on something." Without another word, he turned and walked away. A few minutes later, he sat alone in his private study. The room was dark except for the glow of a desk lamp. He opened a drawer. Inside rested an old photograph. Elena smiled back at him from the picture. For years, he had carried that photograph everywhere. 3 years had passed since she vanished. 3 years without answers. 3 years without closure. Yet he still loved her. He leaned back in his chair. Across the mansion, Sophia was likely unpacking. Most women would have cried after what happened today. Most women would have demanded explanations. Sophia hadn't, and that bothered him, because it made him feel as though she knew something he didn't. Meanwhile, in her room, Sophia opened an old wooden box. The box had belonged to her father. Inside were documents she had protected for years. Letters, contracts, financial records, evidence. She carefully removed a faded photograph. A younger version of her father smiled beside several business partners. One of those partners was Richard Blackwood, Adrian's father. Sophia stared at the image. Pain stirred deep inside her chest. Memories returned. The day her father lost everything. The endless court battles. The debts. The stress. The illness. The hospital room. His trembling voice during his final days. She remembered sitting beside his bed. He had looked frail and exhausted. Yet his eyes remained determined. "There is something you must know." Sophia had squeezed his hand. "What is it?" His voice had barely been audible. "The Blackwoods betrayed us." Tears had filled her eyes. "What do you mean?" "There are documents." He pointed toward the wooden box. "They stole more than money." His breathing became uneven. "They stole our future." Sophia cried as he continued. "One day," he coughed weakly, "one day they will owe you everything." Hours later, he died. And Sophia never forgot those words. Never. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the mansion windows. Sophia woke early. She dressed professionally and headed downstairs. The staff seemed surprised to see her. Most newlywed brides spent their first morning relaxing. Sophia requested coffee and immediately began reviewing company reports. An elderly butler watched her with curiosity. "Planning to work already, ma'am?" Sophia smiled. "Time is valuable." The butler nodded respectfully. By noon, she had already read hundreds of pages of financial documents related to the Blackwood Group. Patterns began emerging. Small inconsistencies, strange transfers, hidden subsidiaries. Nothing definitive. Not yet, but enough to raise questions. Later that afternoon, Sophia entered one of the mansion's private libraries. Thousands of books lined the shelves. Family records occupied an entire section. As she searched through old files, she discovered something unexpected. A locked cabinet. Her pulse quickened. The cabinet contained decades of corporate archives, exactly the kind of record she needed. Unfortunately, it required a key. Sophia examined the lock carefully. Then she smiled. Every secret eventually revealed itself. It was only a matter of time. That evening, Adrian returned home from work. As he walked through the hallway, he noticed light spilling from the library. Curious, he stepped inside. Sophia sat surrounded by books and files. She looked more like an investigator than a bride. "What are you doing?" he asked. She glanced up. "Research." "On what?" "Your family." The answer instantly caught his attention. "My family." Sophia closed a folder. "I'm interested in history." Something about her tone suggested there was more to the story. But before he could press further, she stood. As she passed him, she paused. Then she spoke quietly. "Tell me something, Adrian." "What? Do you trust your father?" The question seemed random. "Of course." Sophia nodded slowly. "I wonder how long that will last." She walked away, leaving Adrian frozen in place. For the second time since the wedding, she had made him uneasy. Very uneasy. And as Sophia disappeared down the corridor, she carried a document hidden beneath her arm. A document she had discovered moments earlier. A document bearing Richard Blackwood's signature. A document connected to the destruction of her father's company. At last, she had found the first piece of proof. Standing alone in the library, Adrian stared after her. He had no idea that the foundation beneath his family's empire was already beginning to crack. And Sophia Hart had every intention of bringing the truth into the light. The outside world. Adrian and Sophia Blackwood appeared to be the perfect power couple. Their photographs filled business magazines, society pages, and online news articles. Whenever they attended charity galas or corporate events, cameras captured their polished smiles and elegant appearances. The truth was very different. Behind the doors of Blackwood Manor, they lived like strangers. They occupied separate wings of the mansion. They ate meals at different times. Some days passed without them exchanging more than a few words. At first, Adrian had welcomed the arrangement. It allowed him to keep emotional distance. It allowed him to continue living in the shadow of the woman he thought he loved. But something unexpected began happening. The more he ignored Sophia, the more impossible she became to ignore, especially at work. 3 months after the wedding, Sophia officially joined Blackwood Group as a strategic advisor. Many executives laughed behind closed doors. They assumed she was simply the boss's wife. A decorative title, nothing more. Those assumptions disappeared quickly. Within weeks, Sophia identified major inefficiencies inside several company divisions. She discovered unnecessary expenses costing millions annually. She proposed new management structures. She negotiated contracts that significantly increased profits. Most importantly, she earned the respect of employees. Unlike many executives, Sophia listened. She learned workers' names. She remembered their concerns. She visited departments others rarely acknowledged. As a result, employees trusted her, even admired her. One afternoon, Adrian entered a boardroom expecting another routine meeting. Instead, he found directors praising Sophia's latest proposal. "This plan saved us nearly $12 million. Remarkable analysis." Mrs. Blackwood predicted market changes months in advance. Adrian remained silent. He hated admitting it, but they were right. Sophia was exceptional. When the meeting ended, one executive smiled. "Sir, your wife may be the smartest person in this building." The comment irritated him more than it should have. Despite her growing success, Sophia never lost sight of her real objective. Every day, she continued investigating. Every week, she uncovered more information. Documents, financial records, hidden accounts, destroyed contracts. Patterns began emerging. The evidence pointed toward a disturbing truth. Years earlier, Richard Blackwood had orchestrated a series of fraudulent acquisitions. Small companies were deliberately manipulated into financial collapse. Once weakened, they were purchased for fractions of their value. Entire families lost everything. One of those companies belonged to Sophia's father. The deeper she dug, the darker the story became. Yet one detail stood out. Adrian's name appeared nowhere. Not once. Sophia reviewed thousands of pages. The conclusion became unavoidable. Adrian had no idea what his father had done. He wasn't the architect. He was simply the heir. That realization complicated everything. Because hating a guilty man was easy. Hating an innocent one was much harder. Meanwhile, Adrian found himself noticing things he had previously ignored. Small things, like how Sophia always arrived at work before everyone else. How she stayed late helping struggling employees. How she never took credit for successes that belonged to others. One rainy evening, Adrian left his office long after sunset. As he passed the customer support department, he noticed lights still on. Curious, he entered. Sophia sat beside a young employee who was quietly crying. The woman looked embarrassed. Sophia handed her a tissue. "What happened?" Adrian asked. Both women looked up. The employee immediately stood. "Sir." Sophia remained seated. "Her son needs surgery." The employee lowered her eyes. "I'll manage somehow." Sophia shook her head. "No, you won't." She slid a folder across the desk. The woman opened it. Her eyes widened. "What is this?" "A medical assistance grant." Tears filled the employee's eyes. "You did this." Sophia smiled. "The company did." The woman began crying harder. "Thank you." Adrian watched silently. After the employee left, he looked at Sophia. "You paid for that yourself, didn't you?" She shrugged. "Does it matter? Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because helping people isn't a publicity campaign." For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Sophia gathered her papers and left. Adrian remained standing alone, confused once again. The woman he had married continued, defying every expectation. A month later, everything changed. Elena returned. The news spread through society's circles within hours. After disappearing for years, the woman Adrian loved was suddenly back. She arrived at a charity gala wearing an elegant red gown. The moment Adrian saw her, the room seemed to disappear. "Elena." She smiled. "Hello, Adrian." For a moment, it felt like time had reversed. The emotions he had buried resurfaced instantly. Memories, dreams, heartbreak, questions. Sophia watched the reunion from across the ballroom. She felt no jealousy, only curiosity, because Elena's return seemed strangely convenient. Very convenient. Over the following weeks, Adrian spent increasing amounts of time with Elena. They attended dinners, private meetings, social events. Photographers eagerly documented every encounter. Headlines exploded across media outlets. Adrian Blackwood reunites with former love. The forgotten wife. Marriage in trouble. Society embraced the drama. And Sophia became the target of endless gossip. Women whispered behind her back. Commentators speculated about divorce. Reporters chased her for statements. Yet Sophia remained calm. As always, one afternoon, Sophia attended a business luncheon. Several wealthy socialites deliberately chose seats nearby. Their conversation wasn't subtle. "Poor thing. I heard Adrian spends every evening with Elena. I'd leave if I were her." Another woman laughed softly. "Maybe she's staying for the money." Sophia continued eating, unbothered. Eventually, one woman addressed her directly. "Mrs. Blackwood, don't the rumors upset you?" Sophia dabbed her lips with a napkin. "No." The woman blinked. "No." Sophia smiled politely. "I have more important things to worry about." The table fell silent. Moments later, the conversation changed. Sophia returned to her meal. Inside, however, her thoughts remained focused on the investigation, because she was closer than ever to discovering the full truth. That evening, she sat alone in her office reviewing newly acquired records. Then she found it. The breakthrough. A hidden account connected directly to Richard Blackwood. Millions of dollars had moved through shell corporations. The transfers matched the timing of her father's financial collapse. Sophia's pulse accelerated. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was proof. Solid proof. She spent hours cross-referencing data. Every detail aligned. Every transaction fit. The case was complete. At last, she knew exactly what had happened. And she knew who was responsible. A few days later, Adrian invited Elena to dinner. The evening began pleasantly. But as the conversation continued, small cracks appeared. Elena spoke constantly about wealth, status, luxury, influence. She seemed obsessed with public perception. At one point she laughed. Can you imagine living without money? Adrian frowned. What do you mean? I mean ordinary people. She sipped wine. Their problems are exhausting. The comment bothered him. Unexpectedly. Months earlier, he might have agreed. Now he thought of Sophia. He remembered her helping employees, visiting hospitals, supporting workers' families. The comparison was impossible to ignore. Elena continued speaking. But for the first time, Adrian wasn't really listening. The next morning, Sophia requested a private meeting. Adrian arrived, expecting another business discussion. Instead, he found several folders arranged neatly across a conference table. Sophia looked unusually serious. What is this? She gestured toward the documents. The truth. Adrian sat down, confused. Sophia opened the first folder. Inside were contracts, financial statements, correspondence, evidence. What am I looking at? Sophia met his gaze. The reason I married you. The words immediately captured his attention. She continued. My father didn't lose his company because of bad luck. Adrian's expression hardened. Sophia, please listen. For the next hour, she explained everything. The fraudulent acquisitions, the hidden transactions, the destroyed businesses, the stolen assets, the families ruined, including hers. When she finished, silence filled the room. Adrian stared at the evidence. Then he laughed. A cold laugh. This is ridiculous. Sophia didn't react. My father built this company. No. Her voice remained steady. He stole part of it. Adrian slammed a hand against the table. Enough. Employees outside the conference room looked up nervously. You expect me to believe this? I expect you to examine the evidence. My father would never. He already did. The words cut through the room like a blade. Adrian stood, his face dark with anger. You're wrong. Sophia slowly gathered the folders. Then prove it. He stared at her, breathing heavily, furious, conflicted. Then he turned and walked out. That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. The documents haunted him. The accusations echoed endlessly. Part of him wanted to dismiss everything, to forget the conversation ever happened. But another part couldn't, because Sophia wasn't emotional. She wasn't vindictive. She wasn't trying to manipulate him. She genuinely believed every word. Around midnight, Adrian opened the files again. Then he began investigating. At first, he searched for flaws, mistakes, anything that would disprove her claims. Instead, he found confirmations. One document matched an archived report. Another matched historical financial records. Then another, and another. Hours passed. The evidence continued, growing stronger, not weaker. By dawn, Adrian felt physically sick. He opened one final file. Inside was a confidential memorandum signed personally by Richard Blackwood. Adrian read it twice, then 3 times. His hands began shaking, because the document proved everything. Every accusation, every betrayal, every lie. It was all true. The room suddenly felt smaller, harder to breathe in. His father had done it. His father had destroyed innocent people. His father had built part of the Blackwood empire on stolen lives, including Sophia's. Adrian lowered himself into a chair. Shock consumed him. For 30 years, he had admired Richard Blackwood, respected him, trusted him. Now that image shattered before his eyes, and beneath the rubble remained a terrible realization. Sophia had been telling the truth from the beginning. Every word, every warning, every mysterious comment, including the one she made on their wedding day. Pay your debts. For the first time, Adrian finally understood what she meant. And as the morning sun rose beyond his office window, illuminating the evidence scattered across his desk, his entire world collapsed around him. The debt was real, the crime was real, and the reckoning had finally arrived. The evidence remained spread across his desk like the shattered pieces of a life he no longer recognized. For 30 years, he had believed his family represented success, integrity, and hard work. Now he knew the truth. Part of the Blackwood empire had been built on deception, on stolen opportunities, on the suffering of innocent families, including Sophia's. Again and again, he reread the documents. Every page confirmed the same horrifying reality. His father had done exactly what Sophia claimed. The realization felt like a knife twisting deeper with every passing hour. Yet the most painful discovery was not the betrayal itself. It was the fact that Sophia had carried this burden alone for years, and despite everything, she had never sought revenge through cruelty. She had sought truth, justice, nothing more. For the first time since their wedding, Adrian saw her clearly, not as a business arrangement, not as an inconvenient wife, but as a woman whose strength far exceeded his own. 3 days later, Adrian drove to his father's private estate. The sprawling mansion stood atop a hill overlooking the city. As a child, he had admired the property. Today it felt like a monument to lies. Richard Blackwood sat in his study reviewing reports when Adrian entered. His father smiled. "You're early." Adrian closed the door behind him. "We need to talk." Richard immediately noticed something unusual. "What happened?" Adrian threw a folder onto the desk. Documents spilled across the polished wood surface. Richard glanced at them. His expression changed instantly. A brief flicker of recognition, then silence. The reaction told Adrian everything. "You knew." Richard leaned back slowly. "Where did you get these?" "You knew," Adrian repeated. The older man remained silent. Anger surged through Adrian. "Answer me." Richard sighed heavily. "It's more complicated than you think." "No." Adrian's voice shook. "It isn't." For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Richard removed his glasses. The business world wasn't kind back then. Adrian stared at him. "You destroyed people." "I did what was necessary." The words hit harder than any confession. Necessary. That was how his father justified it. Necessary. As though ruined lives were merely numbers on a balance sheet. Adrian felt sick. "Sophia's father trusted you." Richard looked away. He was weak. The sentence shattered the last remaining piece of respect Adrian possessed. Without warning, Adrian slammed both hands against the desk. "Don't you dare." His father blinked in surprise. Adrian had never spoken to him that way before. "Do you know what happened to him?" Richard remained silent. "He lost everything." Adrian's voice cracked. His family lost everything. The room grew quiet. For the first time, Richard seemed uncertain. "I built this company. You stole part of it." Richard's jaw tightened. "Watch your words." "No." Adrian stepped back. "I've spent my life admiring you." His eyes filled with disappointment. "But I don't even know who you are anymore." Without another word, he turned and walked away. Behind him, Richard remained seated. For the first time in decades, the powerful businessman looked old. Very old. The scandal erupted 2 weeks later. News organizations received anonymous copies of the documents. Investigations began immediately. Television networks covered the story around the clock. Financial regulators launched inquiries. Former victims came forward. Lawsuits multiplied. Share prices plunged. The Blackwood empire trembled. Executives panicked. Investors demanded answers. Across the country, headlines dominated every newspaper. The fall of a billion-dollar dynasty. Corporate corruption exposed. Blackwood scandal expands. For many families, the revelations brought long-awaited validation. For years they had been dismissed, ignored, forgotten. Now the truth stood in plain sight, and no one could bury it again. Inside Blackwood Group headquarters, chaos ruled. Board members argued. Lawyers rushed between conference rooms. Public relations teams scrambled to contain damage. Amid the storm, Sophia remained remarkably calm. She sat quietly in her office reviewing reports. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." The door opened. Adrian entered. For several moments, neither spoke. Sophia noticed how exhausted he looked. The confident businessman she had married seemed gone, replaced by someone carrying the weight of an entire empire. "You released the documents?" he asked. Sophia shook her head. "No." Adrian frowned. I wanted accountability." She folded her hands. "Not destruction." He studied her carefully. Then he nodded, because he believed her. Finally, the silence stretched. Eventually, Adrian spoke again. Why didn't you hate me? Sophia looked surprised. What? You had every reason. His voice was quiet. My family destroyed yours. Sophia considered the question. Then she answered honestly. You weren't responsible. The simplicity of her response stunned him. Most people would have blamed him, resented him. Sophia never had. She blamed the guilty, no one else. And somehow that made her even more extraordinary. Weeks passed. The investigations continued. Richard Blackwood resigned from every leadership position. Several former executives faced legal consequences. A compensation fund was established for affected families. Billions of dollars were allocated toward restitution. The process would take years, but had finally begun. One evening, Adrian visited a community center where former victims had gathered. Many remained skeptical. Others were openly hostile. He didn't blame them. He listened to their stories. Really listened. For the first time, an elderly man approached him. My brother lost everything. Adrian lowered his eyes. I'm sorry. The man studied him. You aren't your father. The words lingered long after the conversation ended, because Adrian wasn't trying to defend his family's actions anymore. He was trying to repair the damage, no matter how impossible the task seemed. Meanwhile, another truth emerged. Elena's true intentions became impossible to ignore. As investigations expanded, she repeatedly encouraged Adrian to protect family assets, hide resources, preserve wealth, think about himself. One evening, she finally said it directly. You can still save most of your fortune. Adrian stared at her. What about the victims? She rolled her eyes. They'll survive. The casual cruelty shocked him. Months earlier, he might not have noticed. Now he couldn't ignore it. Elena wasn't concerned about justice. She was concerned about money, power, status, nothing else. For years, he had loved an illusion, a memory, not reality. At last, he understood. The woman he thought he loved no longer existed. Perhaps she never had. A week later, Elena left the city. This time, Adrian felt no heartbreak, only clarity. As autumn arrived, Blackwood Group slowly stabilized. The company survived. Smaller, humbler, but stronger. Sophia played a crucial role in rebuilding operations. Employees trusted her. Investors respected her. Victims appreciated her commitment to fairness. One evening, Adrian found her alone on the mansion terrace. The sun was setting beyond the horizon. Golden light painted the sky. For several moments, they stood together in silence. Then Adrian spoke. I owe you an apology. Sophia looked at him. For what? He laughed softly. Where should I start? She smiled. A genuine smile. Perhaps the first truly carefree smile he had ever seen from her. Adrian took a deep breath. The day we married, his voice grew quieter. I treated you terribly. Sophia didn't interrupt. I judged you without knowing you. He stared toward the horizon. I thought you were after money. She raised an eyebrow. You weren't exactly welcoming. A faint smile appeared on his face. No. The silence returned. Then Adrian turned toward her. There's something else. Sophia sensed the seriousness immediately. What is it? He reached into his jacket, then placed several documents in her hands. She glanced down. Her eyes widened. Company shares, property transfers, ownership agreements. What is this? The majority of my holdings. Sophia looked up sharply. What? Adrian nodded. They belong to you. She stared at him in disbelief. Adrian, it's fair. No. She shook her head. It's not. He frowned. My family owes you everything. Sophia closed the folder, then returned it. I don't want your fortune. The answer genuinely surprised him. Most people would have accepted instantly. Sophia didn't even hesitate. What do you want? He asked. Her eyes softened. Justice. Nothing more. Nothing less. In that moment, Adrian understood why she had won the respect of everyone around her. Because she couldn't be bought. Never could. Never would. Winter arrived. Several months later, the final compensation agreements were completed. Families received restitution. Community programs launched. Scholarships were established. Opportunities returned to places long forgotten. The debt was finally being paid. One snowy evening, Adrian invited Sophia to the estate garden. Thousands of lights illuminated the pathways. Fresh snow covered the ground. Everything seemed peaceful. For the first time in years, Adrian felt peace as well. Sophia joined him beneath a gazebo. "You wanted to see me?" He nodded, then smiled nervously. A rare sight. "What is it?" she asked. Adrian looked directly into her eyes. "The day we married." She laughed softly. "You keep returning to that day, because I need to finish something." His voice became serious. On their wedding day, he had said his heart belonged to someone else. The memory still haunted him. Now he wanted to correct it. "I told you my heart was taken." Sophia remained silent. "I was wrong." She watched him carefully. "I thought I loved someone else." He smiled sadly. "But I was holding onto a memory." Emotion filled his voice. "A fantasy." Sophia's heartbeat quickened. For the first time, she understood where the conversation was leading. Adrian stepped closer, then spoke the words he should have said long ago. "The woman who stood beside me when my world collapsed." His eyes never left hers. "The woman who fought for justice instead of revenge." He smiled. "The woman who taught me what integrity actually looks like." Sophia felt tears forming, not from sadness, but from relief, from healing, from closure. "I love you." The words hung in the cold winter air. Simple, honest, real. For several seconds, Sophia couldn't speak. Years of pain, years of determination, years of loneliness, all seemed to fade away. Finally, she smiled. The same mysterious smile she had worn on their wedding day. But this time it carried warmth. Hope. Love. Adrian laughed softly. "What?" Sophia shook her head, then answered with tears shining in her eyes. "Nothing." She stepped closer and gently took his hand. The gesture was all the answer he needed. 1 year later, family and friends gathered once again. This time there was no scandal, no secrets, no lies, only truth, only love, only a future they had chosen together. Standing before their guests, Adrian renewed his vows. His voice remained steady. "My heart is yours." Sophia smiled, the same smile that had confused him years ago, the smile that had changed his life. Then she replied softly. Debt settled. As laughter and applause filled the air, Adrian kissed his wife beneath a sky filled with light. The debt had never been about money. It had never been about power. It had been about truth. And in the end, truth had given them something neither expected. A second chance, a better future, and a love strong enough to survive everything that came before.